just as fast as you can. Anywhere it's out of my hands. Feeling like you're always on a holiday. Moving, going everywhere that you go. Places that I don't even know. Talking, always walking just to pass the day. Driving out in the night, miles away. Keep moving, hanging out, wasting time. Worlds away. Keep moving.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast. Alex Moss here, joined as always by my co-host Darts statistician, and a couple of weeks ago I introduced him as the leader of the American fan club for Neil Warnock. Not quite sure if that's still the same at the moment, but Burton, DeWitt, how are you doing?
Still clear of relegation and excited for our biggest show yet. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing good, thank you. Yes, we've got a busy show for you, and before we get into it, just want to give a shout out to the Q-Sticks for the intro that you'd have just heard at the start of the show. Keep Moving from their album on Spotify. Long story short, they're great to hear that they're back playing outside on the Central Pier in Blackpool. Though personally I won't be able to see them this year, but let's get into it. We've got a busy one. We try and stack up these shows ahead of the big events, and we've got a couple of guests that we know are going to be on. The chief executive of the PDC, Matt Porter, and Devon Petersen, both going to be on the show. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we might get one or two on, but at the time of recording, we're not quite sure. But let's get into some darts that we saw last week. The PDC Tour back, a successful return by all accounts with the summer series. What was your take on it overall?
Yeah, and I do want to clarify the reason I said the biggest show was not because of our guest, but because it's our first time since our very first show that we're on a bogey number, episode number 159. I think it's a big milestone for us, but I thought it was a remarkably good return after 4 months off, and it goes against pretty much everything I said on the show a couple weeks ago, where I thought that this would be the most wide open World Matchplay because players would be rusty. Turned out, okay, a couple of them were, but most of them were just really well rested, and the standard was really good across the 5 days. Fantastic, really. Not at that same record-breaking level as it was the last few events before the break, but not far off of that. And we were seeing players on the very first day in the very first match averaging over the ton and losing in first-round matches. That shows that if there was any rust, it disappeared very quickly. And maybe it just meant that the players needed a break. The schedule is so jam-packed usually that you don't get a chance to recharge. You have a good weekend, well, you have to go and defend your momentum the following week. You have a bad weekend, you have to hit the ground running again the following weekend or midweek sometimes. 4 months off, okay, there was the online tournament, but basically 4 months off. The players looked refreshed and rejuvenated and ready to go out, and it peaked on Saturday with a tournament average of nearly 94. I thought the standard was fantastic, and all things considered, to be able to get 117 tour card holders, yes, a few withdrew over the course of the week, but 117 at the start together, and an atmosphere that was safe for the players and secure, and the bubble as it was just worked perfectly, and I thought it was a great week of darts.
Yeah, and I'm in full agreement here, and I'll touch on what you finished your answer with there, and that was, of course, that we did see 117 of the 128 tour card holders enter the event. They did all start the event. A few of them, as you say, pulled out during the weekend for non-COVID related reasons, we've got to say. But, you know, it was sad that 11 of them couldn't make the trip. But the big thing really was all the players that had entered the event turned up on the Tuesday at the Marshall Arena, Milton Keynes, to go into the bubble. They all got tested for the coronavirus, and all of them, including all like the staff, I think there was over 200 tests they did overall, all came back negative, and right from the get-go, that is a success in itself. I think that they've gone through all of that, players coming over from all around the world, and they've all tested negative, which is brilliant. But as you say, the standard of play, wow, there was some great stuff over the weekend. One of our guests who we mentioned earlier, Devon Petersen, coming on later on, losing a couple of games in the week with 103, 106 average, and then on that Sunday, the semi-final, to lose with a 113 average is quite remarkable, really. And there were some outstanding games throughout the week. And fortunately for us, a lot of them were on the stream boards, and credit to the PDC on their YouTube channel. They've put a few of them out there, so people that don't have access to PDC TV, which is the service that showed it during the week, you can go back and watch some of them games, like the Gerwyn Price Petersen game I mentioned. Gerwyn Price Jose de Souza game that day as well was on there. Martin Kleermaker and Luke Humphreys, an unbelievable game that was, and Chris Dobie, Michael Van Gerwen, just a few games that I can remember straight away. Just some really good games. And okay, the standard across every single game, it wasn't quite that high, but when you're seeing players come back after 3 or 4 months off, losing with 95 plus, 100 plus averages, it is a very good sign, isn't it? And as we mentioned, that the home tour that the PDC put on during the break, there were players that unfortunately they couldn't play in it. And if they've gone 4 months without playing PDC darts, and even the players that were able to play in the home tour and maybe had a bad day, lost in the first phase and didn't get a chance, didn't get a second bite of the cherry when they started picking the players again, only 1 day of PDC darts over that 4 months. Yeah, like you, very impressed with the overall standard that we got to see last week.
Now we'll go on and talk our first question of the week, and it also relates to the summer series, having had such a successful, at least as we both agree, successful first year of the summer series. Do you think the PDC should use that format again, 5 events in 5 days before the cutoff for the 2021 World Matchplay, which will hopefully be in Blackpool?
Straight away, I've got to say yes without really thinking too much about it. And the votes that we've got on Twitter at the moment, we've got 3 questions of the week that we're going to be talking about this week on the show, all of them on our Twitter page. So if you want to go and vote after listening, you can go and do that and see what the vote's looking like at the moment. But as we're recording this, 84% saying yes, 16% saying no. So a lot of people, they want to see it again next year. And I certainly think it's going to be considered, isn't it, by the PDC, given how well it went last week. And it just provided that excitement. You know, every player had a chance to make the World Matchplay. Okay, there were some players that would probably have to win a couple of titles maybe to get in contention. They were that low down on the Pro Tour list, but every player had a chance to do it. There was 5 events, there was enough prize money there, and all the players that had entered had that opportunity to play. So for me, and as well, going into the final day, you had 20 plus players that still had a mathematical chance of getting in. You had John Henderson, who was dodging bullets, match darts left, right and centre throughout the day, getting to the quarterfinals. As we mentioned, Devon Petersen needed a title, got to the semi-finals, got very close, missed a match dart to get to the final, and that would have put him just 1 game away from what would have been a quite remarkable final day to get into the field. But yeah, I think it's something they're going to consider. On the other side of things, you've got last year that the European Tour was the final event before the cut-off, and Jamie Hughes needed a title win in Prague, and that's exactly what he did. And when we look at the calendar itself, it is very stacked. And this time of year, you've got the World Series events, usually New York, all over the place, and that's where the big boys are going. So to get a stretch of 4 or 5 days, you're basically taking out a week of the calendar to put on these events. It's just going to depend whether they can put it on in the calendar. But I think if they get the general feedback from the players, I think it's going to be mostly, if not all, good. I think we could generally see it next year, and they've got a brand there, haven't they? The summer series, you've got 5 events before the cut-off. There's a lot of excitement guaranteed. I think a lot more guaranteed than if you were to say we're going to stick with a European Tour event when possibly a lot of the players that are in the running may not even qualify for that event. Yeah,
and the last few years, the cutoff has been a European Tour event. You mentioned last year in Prague with Jamie Hughes winning the title. The year before, it was in Hamburg. Willie O'Connor nearly won the title to get into the field, losing the final to Michael Van Gerwen, which allowed Richard North to sneak in. And I believe the year before that was also European Tour. But I prefer having the Players' Championship events as the final day because, okay, not all 128 are usually going to be entering the final day with a chance to qualify, but all 128 will be playing. And it gives every player a chance to, at the very least, play spoiler to someone's hopes. And it'll give more players a chance to sneak in as opposed to just the 48 who are playing in the European Tour event, most of whom will have already qualified anyway for the World Matchplay. So I do like having Players' Championship events as the last thing before the cutoff, but it was an added bonus that we had 5 days of it. So if you had a player get hot and win a couple of these, that would be enough to get them into the World Matchplay, and it gives you something to shoot for. But it won't always be like that. If it had not been for COVID, you were looking at £40,000 to get in to the World Matchplay, which means even if you had 5 days of these, if you had a poor season and were coming in having won only £5,000 to date, you're going to have to win 3 and make a final to get to the World Matchplay. So it wouldn't be realistic to have this be as wide open as it was this week, where everyone in the field had a good chance, if they had a great week, to get in. But I think something like this makes sense. The PDC is going to eventually have to move these Players' Championship events either to midweek or to clumps like this because of how compact the calendar is. And it'll cut down on travel if players are coming through to play 5 days in a row. So I think this is the future. Your Pro Tour weekends won't be weekends. They will be either midweek for 3 or 4 days, or they will be a weekend spilling over to the previous week or the following week. And having groups of 5 makes sense. And I think as that being the last thing before cutoff for a major event makes even more sense, because, okay, realistically, maybe only half the players will have a chance to get in, even if it's 5 events. But when it is 5 events, you have that chance to win 2 of them if you get hot at the right time. And there is not a player in this field, or there's very few players in this field who, if they're at their best, can't win 2 out of 5 because of how high a standard they have. So I think this is the most interesting way to do it, and I would like to see something like this going forward. Obviously, throughout the year, more of these 5 events and 5 days things, but especially before the cutoff for major events.
Now we'll move on to our first guest on this week's show, and it is with the Chief Executive of the PDC, Matt Porter. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Chief Executive of the PDC, Matt Porter. Really appreciate your time, Matt. How you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, Alex. Yeah, all good.
Now, we're talking less than 24 hours after the Summer Series conclusion. The Darts League are back up and running with 5 Players' Championship events last week. Leaving Milton Keynes, how did you feel the week went overall?
Yeah, I was really pleased, actually. I mean, number one was it was good to give the guys a chance to come back and play competitively against each other face-to-face, so to speak, again. And number two, operationally, it was good to see a plan coming together, because it was a logistical challenge to get it up and running with everything, with the testing, the social distancing and all the new procedures that we put in place. But the staff were excellent, and the players' approach was fantastic. They were professional, they were understanding, and they respected the rules, and it was good. It was a credit to darts.
And we had your tournament director, Graham Fairhurst, on the show a few weeks ago, looking ahead to the resumption of the tour under the bubble setting. Yourself arriving in Milton Keynes, being tested, the quarantine, the whole operation leading into the event. How were you feeling before play started? Was there any apprehension at all? Were you confident that you got everything covered and it would be okay?
Yeah, we were confident that the procedures were in place. It's just how they were applied that would have been the challenge. But, as I say, everybody followed them well. Fortunately, we didn't have any positive tests. That would have obviously presented its own challenge. But, it ran as well as could be expected. Obviously, a couple of guys had to leave early for different reasons, nothing to do with COVID or anything like that. Obviously, everyone can have their own personal issues that crop up from time to time. But, we got through it.
The pandemic obviously shut everything down for the last few months. These were the first ranking events in close to 4 months. At what point, though, did you guys, the PDC, start to consider putting events on again with the bubble? Could you have done it earlier, or was this the right time for you?
We could have potentially done it a little bit earlier, but I don't think it would have made a huge difference. The fundamental purpose of those events was to finalise the qualification process for the World Matchplay. So whether we'd have done them second week of July, first week of July, last week of June, wouldn't have really, made any difference. So we wanted to give players maximum amount of chance to make their preparations, particularly overseas players. We knew that the quarantine situation was going to change. We'd hoped it was going to change before the event. As it was, it sort of changed during it, but we made sure with our communication with government that everything was cleared for everybody to enter the country. So that was made more straightforward by it being a little bit later, and I think there were 50 of the 128 players had to get on an aeroplane to get here, so that was an important consideration as well.
You mentioned a few bits there, but obviously a lot of hoops to jump through to get these events on last week. In the planning stages leading up to the return, what would you say were the toughest challenges you guys faced in particular to getting the Summer Series on?
Well, yeah, I mean, the issue with getting overseas players in was one. Obviously, the venue layout, we had one-way systems and allocated practice boards, social distancing, plenty of signage, all those sort of things. That they were a challenge. The Marshall Arena is a great venue for us. The Masters does very well there in January, and We know that they can stage tour events there. We've had qualifiers and pro tour events there and secondary tour events, so we know that can work. So that was good, really. And as I say, everybody had the attitude of let's get back to work. So it worked.
Over the last 24 hours or so, we've seen a lot of positive feedback from players, fans about how the summer series went. Just, I suppose it could be a little bit of a happy accident, a bit like with the contenders in the Premier League. Is this something maybe you might try and do next year with the 5 players championship events before the cut-off for the World Matchplay?
Yeah, possibly. Whether they're just before the World Matchplay or another time or whatever, doesn't really make a huge difference. The key for us is to deliver as many players championship events as we can. We try to do 30 a year. We do 30 a year. Obviously this year that might be more of a challenge, but if it means that it's easier to stage events, then it might be something we look at again. The key will obviously be how long we have to keep a bubble or a sort of semi-bubble type scenario in place, and how long before we can go back to just doing the weekends where people can turn up on the day and play. There's all those factors to bear in mind that will impact on the future landscape of our tournament calendar.
And we've had a few questions come in from our listeners and some from a few players as well. And from a player's point of view that are not involved in the World Matchplay or the Premier League, when are they likely to hear about plans for the next events on the PDC calendar?
Well, Premier League will be this week. We will confirm what's happening with the first few events that were due to be scheduled there. We're working on that now. And then, the others will be as and when they're ready. It's not a question of us holding information back. We are working hard, and we will only make decisions to cancel events when we know for sure that they can't take place.
And some events that have been cancelled or moved, a lot involving the European Tour. Just with regards to the qualifiers that did take place before the lockdown, is there any plans for those? Are they going to be null and void, or is there plans to keep them moving forward?
No, we will try to reschedule as many events as we can before we run out of time. Clearly, our calendar runs or our year runs on a kind of calendar basis, so it's difficult for us to hold something over to next year. That doesn't really make a huge amount of sense, because obviously the next incarnation of that event comes around and the tours start again and things like that. So the aim will be to get events played in the second half of the year as best we can, and if we can't, then unfortunately they will have to be cancelled.
A couple on the Challenge Tour and the Development Tour. I know you guys put out an update early this month on the future of both of those seasons. Are you hopeful of getting some events on before the end of the year with those two?
Yeah, hopefully. As I mentioned in the previous sort of answer, a lot of it will depend on if there's a bubble requirement. If there is, then it's going to be difficult to stage those events. It's extremely costly. It puts a lot of time pressure on players and things like that. So, it's going to be difficult to do those tours in a bubble environment. But we'll see. How long we would need to do that for, and when normality might return.
Arguably, the biggest event involving those two tours, in particular the Development Tour, is the World Youth Championship. Is there a possibility we see a bubble environment with 64, 96 players to get that event on?
Possibly, yeah. We're concentrating at the moment on what's due to be happening over the next few weeks. That's clearly our priority. So I'm not saying we've forgotten the other stuff, but it's pointless to plan. You have to plan chronologically. You can't plan something that's due to take place in the latter half of the year before you've planned what's due to take place before it. So, the picture is ever changing. At the moment, the restrictions are becoming less onerous. So, if that keeps happening, then it will make staging these other events more straightforward. Yeah,
that's completely understandable. A lot of short-term planning at the moment, but obviously the World Matchplay coming up this weekend is behind closed doors in terms of your big week-plus long events. This is the first one to come up on the calendar since the pandemic broke out, but realistically at the moment, how long can the PDC continue with no spectators for these big events?
As long as we need to, really. We've been prudent in the past with finances. We've got reserves which are there for reasons like this, so we can carry on paying full prize money and paying staff wages and all the costs that go with putting events on. So that's that's not a short-term problem for us. But listen, if we're having this conversation in 2 years' time or whatever, then the whole world will be in a different position. It won't just be the PDC. But we've got no issues at the moment.
And you touched on about the Premier League as well, so I won't ask you about that with the announcement coming up. So we'll go back to the World Matchplay really to finish, starting this Saturday live on Sky Sports here in the UK. Obviously, we know it's going to be played with a stage. We assume the walk-on to the ref, that's all going to be the same. But what else have the PDC and Sky got planned to make it look and feel as normal as possible, given the lack of crowd there?
Well, there'll be artificial crowd noise, which we'll also play into the hall. I think it'll make it a better atmosphere inside the hall than if it was just deathly silent and echoey. So that'll probably try and make everybody a little bit more relaxed. And we will have a video wall behind the players, which we'll have some content on, and some banners around just to try and liven up the appearance, really, because we don't want it to look sterile, even though it'll be played in a relatively sterile environment. We want the players to react and engage and show some emotion as best they can in that kind of situation. And we want the viewing public at home to feel like they're watching a real event as much as they can.
And I know it was different circumstances, but obviously you've got a little bit of experience in the past with the UK Open 2 years ago, ended up being virtually behind closed doors. Are there things that you guys have looked back on from that event, things that went well, things that didn't go well, that you can take into this weekend?
I mean, that was obviously a different scenario because it was very last minute, that, and to be honest, at the time our focus was actually on getting the event on. Because of the difficult circumstances, there being a lot of snow around and power problems and water problems and things like that. So that was a different challenge to what we're facing now, where logistically this event is easy to put on as a darts event. It's everything that goes around it that presents the challenge. So we didn't have opportunity back in Minehead to put any sort of fake atmosphere in or anything like that because it was so short, so sort of last minute. But we'll see how it goes, and if we do something and it doesn't seem to work, we'll change it and just evolve the offer. Unfortunately, Sky have had a fair bit of practice with the football that's been going on, so we'll see how we go.
Lastly, before we let you go, I wanted to give you a chance to say a few words about Dave Clark. Obviously fronted Sky's coverage of the darts for a long time, and Sunday evening announcing that he's going to be stepping down from the role. A lot of lovely comments and tributes to him pouring in since then. Two parts to this question, really. What legacy do you think he'll leave, in your opinion? And I know it's still very early, but any plans to name a trophy after him?
Yeah, I mean, Dave has been the face of PDC darts for the British viewing public for 2 decades now, and he was loved by everybody. He's loved by everybody who works on the events. He's popular with the players. He was good to be around socially, and of course he was knowledgeable. So people respected his opinion, and he judged it right. I mean, you have to see the reactions that he got from crowds, particularly in Leeds when he went on stage. That was great. And what's sort of good about this is that it was Dave's decision, made at the right time for him. Obviously he's had a lot of time to reflect, as we all have, whilst we've not been working on regular events, and he's decided that with a family to travel the world with, now's the time for him to do it. So good luck to him, and I hope it's a very exciting new chapter for him. As someone I'm very proud to have worked alongside. For 1998 I first worked alongside him when we were both doing local radio, so 22 years ago. And obviously on the darts and the boxing, the pool, other matchroom content for the last 15 or so years. So he's someone who I've known for a long time, and I think he's an outstanding sports broadcaster and more importantly, an outstanding person.
Definitely is. Well, Matt, it's always a pleasure to get you on the show, and I know it's a busy time for you at the moment, so I appreciate you taking out a few minutes to have a chat with us.
You're very welcome.
Well done on last week, and wish you all the best for the World Matchplay.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks to all your listeners and the nice comments that they've made about us over the last few weeks have not gone unnoticed. So we appreciate what PDC fans have acknowledged in recent times.
Thanks again to Matt for joining us, and we're going to chat a little bit about our sponsors, Low 6. We did a lucky dip last week during the summer series, and what a win for myself, Burton. Unfortunately, it was a little bit too early for you where you are to get involved. It was involving some first round games from one of the Players' Championship events on the Thursday. But 10 out of 10 for me. I still can't believe it, and it's been almost a week later that I managed to do that. But yeah, win for me. Shared the prize pot with Dan Hutchinson, so congratulations to him as well. And we should have another lucky dip during the World Matchplay starting this Saturday. And we'll, I know you don't like to know what this segment's going to be about, but this is what we're going to do for this one. I'm going to ask you to go through the first 3 games that we've got for this year's World Matchplay starting on Saturday, 6 o'clock. And just go through your picks. Who do you think is going to win each game? So first up, we've got Simon Whitlock, Ryan Joyce. Second game, Christoph Ratajski against Jermaine Wattimena. And third game to pick, James Wade against Keegan Brown. Who you got?
Ooh, and it's a good start to the tournament. And, if we'd gone back before the COVID break, Simon Whitlock was not playing well. And he's way outside of the seeds for the Pro Tour events now because he's really struggled over the past year. But I was impressed with him over the weekend. Yes, he did not have any major results, but he was playing at a much better standard than he was at the end of last year and at times at the beginning of this year. But that said, he draws the newest first-time winner in the PDC, Ryan Joyce, who won on the Thursday to get his first PDC title and to leapfrog into a debut in the World Matchplay. Probably a little disappointing for Ryan Joyce that he's here, but it's not where it's supposed to be. It's in Milton Keynes, the new home of World Darts, not Blackpool. But I think he'll be all the motivated and have the confidence that he can beat, not as much of an out-of-form Whitlock as had been, but a Whitlock who has passed his best. I'm going to go Ryan Joyce to nip at 10-7. Christoph Ratajski against Jermaine Wattimena. This is a tough one. We've still not seen the best from, either of these players on TV. They're players that have done phenomenally well on the floor and at times on the European tour, but haven't yet hit their peak on television. It's a big opportunity for both of them, but I think Ratajski is going to come in just playing that little bit better. I'm going to go Ratajski to win 10-6. And then third match, James Wade against Keegan Brown. Keegan Brown, one of the last people into the field. James Wade recently said after winning a title that he looks at every major and after it feels like that should have been him. I don't know if that's a sign of confidence or a sign of a bit of pessimism on Wade's part, that he's on the I should have won that train, because he's won quite a few of them. It's tough, but Wade looked really good this past week. I mean, really good in Milton Keynes. I think he's hungry. Whether the confidence is there or not doesn't matter, because he's playing well and he wants it. I think he's going to win that one comfortably.
Well, I've gone for the same in two of the three of those. The first game, though, I'm going the other way. I'm going to go with Simon Whitlock on this one. And yes, Ryan Joyce done so well last week, didn't he, to win his first PDC ranking title, and some very good performances. We know what he's capable of. We've seen what he's done at a World Championship a couple of years ago, getting to the quarterfinals, and we really saw some of the best stuff that Ryan Joyce can play last week. 100 average in the final against Dave Chisnell. Did survive match darts, though. Chizzy could have won that one, but came through 8-7 in a decider. The round before, 100 plus average again to beat Gary Anderson to 7-3, I think it was. So he had a very good day, and he also put out Glenn Durrant as well in the quarterfinals in a last leg decider. Not many people can say that they've been able to get past Glenn in a last leg decider. So had a really good run last week. I'm going to go with Simon Whitlock, though, just in terms of stage experience. I know we're not going to have the crowd there, and it's not going to be at the Winter Gardens in Blackpool, but I just think Simon Whitlock over that longer format may just get the edge on that one. The other two, like you, I've got it going with the seeds. Christoph Ratajski, I think he's up to number 13 in the world now, so that's the highest he's ever been. He's a player that is on the rise. Jermaine Wattimena just seems like his progress has maybe stopped a little bit. He's maybe hit a plateau, and we know what he's, again, like with all these players, we know that they're capable of putting in big performances on stage. I do think Christoph Ratajski is the one to go for on this one. And the third game, again, going to go with James Wade, like yourself. He's a title winner last week. He's a winner of this event before. Okay, at the old venue, not the new home of World Darts as we're calling it in Milton Keynes, but I do think he's going to get through in that one. Keegan Brown maybe scraped a little bit through, didn't he, last week? He lost in the first round in the first 3 days. Then he had a couple of wins over the last couple of days, which pretty much made sure that he'd get in, barring someone winning a title or getting to a final. So I just think the form line, like with the others, like with the Christoph Ratajski game, I'm going to go with James Wade on that one as well. And if you guys want to get involved in our Lucky Dip, go against myself and Burton. We'll put our picks out for all 5 of those games on the Saturday as well. Then do download the Low 6 app if you want to get a free £3 bet. If you haven't used that yet, do use the promo code Dartscast. And as always, it is 18 plus, UK residents only. New customers limit 1 per person. T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly and go to begambleaware.org to find out more about that.
Now we'll go to our second of 3 questions of the week, and this one will take us back through memory lane to World Matchplay finals gone by. What is the best World Matchplay final of all time? You can go on our Twitter to vote. We have 3 options, although, Alex, you can feel free to pick something else. Rod Harrington, not Ryan Harrington, against Ronnie Baxter in 1998. Adrian Jackpot Lewis against Phil the Power Taylor in 2013, and just a couple years ago, the marathon match between Gary Anderson and Mensur Suljovic. Or are you going to go off the board for this one?
Well, I'm not playing darts, so I'm not going to be going off the board this time round. I'm going to go with one of those three. And yeah, looking at the results so far on the poll, 56% going with the most recent of those three finals on there, which is Gary Anderson, Mensur Suljovic, which did go to overtime. And we've had a few people get in touch as well already, replying to the poll and saying their thoughts. Charlie Gray going with the Suljovic-Anderson final. Warren Allsworth going with other, which is an option on the poll. He's gone with the 2002 final, which was Phil Taylor against John Park. John Park, I believe, 16-15 up, and Phil Taylor winning the next three legs to come through 18-16. That was, of course, the year that Phil hit the first live 9 data on UK television. And the other two, though, Taylor Lewis is probably the highest standard of those three combined. You've got 111 average for Phil and 105 average for Adrian Lewis. That was a really high quality game, and I'm probably going to go at this moment in time. I might go back and watch those three finals that we've put on the poll and probably change my mind to Gary Anderson, Mensur Suljovic. But at this moment in time, I'm going to stick up for the old guard. I'm going to go with Rod Harrington against Ronnie Baxter. We had Rod on our Legend series quite recently, a few weeks ago now, and we spoke about this final, and it was, I suppose it was a preview to what was to come with the Grand Slam, PDC against BDO. It was PDC, BDO in the final, and there was a lot of stake at that point in time as well. I think the court case had only just finished with regards to the split, but they wanted a PDC guy to win a PDC event, and Rod producing one of the best checkouts we've ever seen. It's probably going to get played over the weekend on Sky with the montages, but the 1-2-5 treble 15 tops a checkout, a route that we rarely saw back then, if at all, and nowadays we're seeing the double being used a lot more for the checkouts. But for me, I'm going to go with that one. But as I say, if I go back and watch these three finals this week, I might switch it to the Anderson Suljovic game.
Yeah, I agree here that there might be a little bit of recency bias in, at least as of the time we're recording, the votes we've gotten on this. But it might be fair recency bias, because that Anderson-Suljovic match was incredible. Suljovic looking heading into the third break like he was going to run away with it, and then Gary Anderson pulling off 6 consecutive legs to not just get back in it, but to edge in front before Suljovic comes roaring back to force overtime. It was just, besides the fact that it was incredible standard, Suljovic losing with a 104 average was an enthralling match. But I have to go Phil Taylor against Adrian Lewis. That's one of the matches that really got me hooked on darts. It was the first time I was watching a World Matchplay final, and just the standard throughout, over 31 legs, was incredible. Between, at the time, two of the three best players in the world. Adrian Lewis was no longer the defending world champion, but had won 2 of the past 3. Probably had already been passed by Michael Van Gogh for second best in the world, but he was still right there at the top of the game. And obviously, Phil Taylor was still the world number 1. It wasn't just a precursor for their legendary match a few months later in Wolverhampton. I think it was an even better match because the standard stayed for both of them for 31 legs. Adrian Lewis's standard dropped off at the end of that famous semifinal. He still was playing well, but he wasn't playing at the 110 level. Phil Taylor and Adrian Lewis kept this up for 31 legs in the final of the second biggest tournament, and a ranking tournament at that, on the calendar. I just think that match is one of the most underrated matches of all time, one of the greatest matches of all time that doesn't get the respect it deserves, and I think it was the best World Matchplay final we've ever had.
Now we'll move on to our next guest on this week's show, and it is with the South African number 1, Devon Petersen. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the African warrior, Devon Petersen. Thanks for the time, Devon. How you doing?
Hey, Alex, I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
Always nice to have you on, and the summer series seems like the best place to start, really. Just a couple of days have passed since Sunday and the final event of the week. An eye-catching run from yourself on the final day. Lots of praise on social media on how well you played. How were you feeling as you left Milton Keynes?
Yeah, it was good. I'm not going to say I didn't. I wanted to play well at the summer series. I put in the work. Just before lockdown, I've been playing well, and then lockdown happened. I started putting in a work around the areas that I thought needed kind of just sharpening up and so on and so forth. And yeah, I took a few days off or weeks off in lockdown, and pleasantly surprised that obviously when I got to the summer series, I kind of gained momentum, if it must be that, and just kind of dusting the rust off, if you must call it that. And then on the last day, having a really good run, and I think it was just a build-up of momentum, which was great. Unfortunate that I didn't get to win it in the end, but I mean, I enjoyed the game against Cohen Price, and he just did enough to hold me off.
Yeah, I was going to touch on the lockdown really, because before the tour got shut down because of the virus, you were in some good form. You had another semi-final on the floor, and you were claiming some big name scalps on the tour as well. How frustrating was it for you to see all the events called off to begin with, because it looked like you were really starting to build that momentum?
Yeah, for me, I had mixed feelings about it. Like, if you're playing well, you want to be on the board all the time, but I felt like up and until then, the process of building my game and making sure that technique is right and throw, and it's well documented that I've always kind of not tinkered but changed my complete throw, and obviously worked with Wayne and now Colin Lloyd as well. There's loads of things obviously happening behind the scenes, and when the lockdown happened, it came at the perfect time, because it was almost I ended on a peak in a sense at that point when it happened, and it gave me enough time to kind of conceptualize and get my mind around exactly how playing well feels, and the consistency, and also just maintaining that focus, not getting too excited because you're playing well, which can easily happen, and a distraction like that can cause you to lose games, silly games as well, that you should be easily winning. So yeah, it gave me a lot of time to kind of look back at what I've achieved, as in what my throw so far, and then just work on the areas. And I dedicated that time, and there was also a opportunity for me to practice without the pressure, because obviously if you're practicing during the week and you're playing on the weekend, there's added pressure to it somehow. So the focus of the practice is not amazing, but yeah, it's as good as it can be. So yeah, I think where we're at now is the lockdown kind of suited me fine, and gave me enough time to kind of put everything right that I wanted to, and the results showed at the Summer Series.
Yeah, we saw the tour come back last week with the 5-day run of Players' Championship events. When you arrived in Milton Keynes on the Tuesday, like all the other players, to have the test and then go into the quarantine, how did you find that experience?
It was quite nerve-wracking to begin with. I mean, not just the fact that they put the 2-meter pole down your nostrils and kind of dig at the back of your throat, and then it's not that though. It's more the fact that what the result is. Even though we've all been in lockdown in a sense, and quarantined and sanitized and wore masks. You never know. You could go into like a garage and just touch something that somebody else had COVID, and then it got. So I think that was the most nerve-wracking thing is waiting for the results. Even though you felt like there was nothing wrong, but you still needed to get the results. So yeah, once you got the results, I think everything was okay. But just chilling in the room. I mean, I took my PlayStation with, so that allowed me to continue playing Warzone, and I had my practice board there. So yeah, it wasn't too bad. I think the only nerve-wracking thing was waiting for the results, and once we all got a negative result, which was a positive news for everybody, I think it was just back to business as usual.
Definitely, and a big subplot to the week obviously was that these events would be the last ones before the cut-off for the World Matchplay. Before the break, you, as I mentioned, you made that semi-final, you qualified for 2 European Tour events. Did you feel that this was a fair compromise for the players that were hoping to qualify for the Matchplay?
Yeah, I think it was. It's never going to be obviously exactly how you wanted, and the PDC just made it work for everybody. There's loads of players that were affected massively, like Joe Cullen, Johnny Clayton, which I know because I know them quite well. And I mean, the lockdown hasn't been great for them because obviously money was taken off without them being able to defend, and loads of other players as well. So yeah, I think. I don't know. I feel as though if it continued, I would have probably qualified for the World Matchplay. But putting it 5 events on just before the cutoff, and that's the only event you have. So yeah, it does build up some pressure, and if you want to make match play and so on and so forth. But I'm quite pleased with the way it turned out in a sense, and I would have been over the moon if I obviously qualified for match play. But I'm just too glad that we actually got back to throwing and playing again competitively, face to face, or within a venue, which means that the bright days are yet to come. So yeah, I think it was fair in a sense, but yeah, it's never gonna be perfect. So yeah, I think in the end we just have to adapt.
Definitely, and I've got to speak to you about Ryan Joyce as well. He went on to win his first ranking title on the second day last week, and he credited you for helping give him some confidence before the day's play. Can you tell us what you said to him, or given his good run that he had, are you planning to make it a paid service now for the players to give some words of motivation?
A paid service, I'm always looking to get a dime or a nickel at any point. But yeah, it's just generally what normally happens though. Like at a pro tour, I mean, I'm quite friendly with everybody, and especially like Ryan Joyce and the likes of Christobi and all of them, and especially when we practice, I mean, you're always asking the players, how did you go yesterday, and just showing an almost an interest in how the results are, because generally when you're on the tour, it would feel as though you're the only one losing, or you're the only one not making progress and so on. And once you hear like different stories, it kind of helps you with experiencing or managing your frustration and so on. And when you were chatting about it, you were just saying that he has no confidence, and I've been there before, like many other dart players, and we just spoke, and I can't exactly say what I said to him, because obviously it was just the normal Devon Petersen positivity, think about this, look at this, change this, and we did a game that I've kind of started using in my practice, which I think he took to it, and he enjoyed it. I beat him as well in the game, and then he ended up winning the tour, the series, which was or that event of the day. So I think like any other player, I mean, we all good quality players, and it's just something can unlock the beast in you and can help you with that. And I'm happy that it did unlock, and he won his first title. I won't take credit for it. But I'm surely going to send my 10% invoice for it.
And looking at your results from the week, 2 of the 4 days you went out with 103, 106 averages, the 106 to Daryl Gurney on the 4th day. Going into that final day on the Sunday, did you still feel confident of a run and maybe just needing a little bit of luck this time round?
Yeah, it's the thing is I've noticed that a lot of the times when I'm losing games, besides the one against Mike the Decker, that was the one, was a board final game, and I never played well otherwise, and there was a whole host of things that I didn't do what I normally do, and I wasn't prepared for that match, I think. But all the other games, though, I mean, the games that I've lost, I either had an opportunity to take the match, or the players are just playing phenomenally well against me, and I mean, that's the standard you expect in the PDC. Like the Daryl Gurney game, he took 4 time class finishes whilst I was either on a double or within shout of a double, do you know what I mean? And you kind of look back and you go, well, if I just continue playing like this all the time, there's no way that I'm going to get beat all the time with a top, just over the 10 plus average, you know what I mean? And fair play on Sunday. I managed. I came back from Gabriel Clemens, and I played Daryl Gurney again, got my revenge victory over him. Played MVG, beat him, led him 5-0 as well, and then he came back to 5-all, and then I just showed him who was not showed him sorry. I just showed exactly the character and obviously the fight back that I had in the 5-all game, which he missed 1 match start, I think it was, and I checked out on double 5, I think, which was fantastic for me, and probably just gave me even more confidence, because I know that he's been playing amazing and winning obviously two summer series. But I think where Devon Petersen's confidence is now is chalk and cheese where it was last year. So I'm happy with everything at the moment.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that game on Sunday with Michael. Unfortunately, it wasn't on one of the streaming boards, but watching it from Dart Connect, it looked like an incredible game. As you mentioned, you went 5-0 up. I think you had a 148 finish in there as well somewhere, and he pulls it back to 5-all. What's going through your head as you go up to the Oki to start that decider?
Nothing really. I think I've spoken to, I was leading him 5-0, and in that game, when I started the game, I was psyching myself up for the game itself, and when I got there, I executed, and as soon as I got to 5-0, I was leading 5-0, and then it's almost like I switched off in a sense, and I know exactly what I said to myself, and I just said, just finish the game now, win the game. And before that, the self, or the talk that I had with myself was just smash him, beat him, blah, 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 and just and the confidence was high, and when I got to 5, it got to a point where it changes the mentality, and I think that's where I switched up. And when it got to 5-all, it was almost like a realization, like, okay, cool, let's switch it on now, because this is the last leg, and fair enough, I qualified, I got over the line, but I should have beat him 6-4, because I missed double 8, unfortunately, and he took it to 5-all, but it was a great game. I felt really comfortable. He wasn't playing magically well, but as soon as he got his first leg on, he started playing like he can play, and I think he just dug himself out of a hole, but I made sure that I ended it off with the last shovel of dirt on him.
Great win, and you make it through to the semi-finals as we mentioned on the Sunday. You go up against Goen Price, a 170 finish from you to bring it back to 4-all, and in the decider, unfortunately narrowly missing a match start at double 16. You finish up with a 113 average, and even though it was a defeat, do you feel like that game is one which perhaps is a sign of all the hard work that you've put in on your game over the last 2 years?
No doubt. I mean, ultimately, you look at the 130 and it's a massive average, and that just shows like the consistency in the game. I missed a 90 that was crucial as well for a break of throw. I missed a double 15 in that game as well, late on in the game, which would have given me an opportunity to actually hold and maybe just see out the victory. But well, credit to Goen, I mean, he's got he's definitely got that champion thread in him, and it runs through his veins. He's quite cool under pressure as well, and yeah, he showed it. I mean, he's defending Grand Slam champ, and rightfully so. I mean, he played well in that game. If you look at the game itself, on his throw, he was virtually almost unbreakable to an extent, except for those 2 times that I could. But other than that, it was really solid, and he just never wavered, even though I put pressure off every throw was 2 in the treble all the time, and a lot of players would have folded, but he just maintained and stuck with his guns, and yeah, it was a really good game. And I think for me itself, it showed testament that I could reach those heights and against players of that caliber, of the lead caliber players, and he's been performing great. So for me to kind of play him when he's playing at his best and competing and having that opportunity to actually finish the game out and missing it, it shows that I still have room to grow, which is great. So yeah, I think the 113 average, not the tip of the iceberg, but surely it's showing that the process is working out, and all my hard work now is kind of going to bring rewards. So yeah, just continue practicing, and hopefully more of the same.
Just one more on your game before we just finish up with looking ahead to your work with Sky, which starts with the World Matchplay, and just on your throw, really, you've spoken in the past about how you've changed your throw. You work with Wayne Mardle and Colin Lloyd as well, 2 great guys that have been helping you out as well. What is it in particular you think that you've changed in your game recently, which seems to have made such a big difference?
It's a whole host of things though. Like, it started with obviously the technique and understanding from the ground up, so your platform, which is your feet, and then the tilt of your body, and all of these things that obviously people don't look at. I dissected my entire throw and obviously put it back together exactly how I wanted it to be. And I think I'm probably 75% to 80% there now. And I think that I still got about 20 to 25% to still complete in a sense. But that only comes with time, and obviously your body gets to understand that that's the way in which you throw all the time. Yeah, and then you're talking about mentality, confidence, understanding that you have to trust the process, and once you see the rewards, then obviously you start trusting the process even more. I mean, in the beginning, it's blind trust because it's all you have, and now it's more like, I'm glad that I did it then, and now I'm reaping the rewards now. So yeah, and then obviously with Colin Lloyd and Wayne Mardle, still I'm able to obviously gain from the experience with any questions I have, and they quickly respond to me and stuff like that. And Colin Lloyd's been fantastic as well over this last few days and weeks. Yeah, just stepping in, because obviously a big thing in elite sports is mentorship and coaching, which dart players don't really have, and I've taken it on my own to kind of venture, because I do a lot of self-development and reading and stuff like that, and it's one of the areas that I see that not a lot of dart players have, and yeah, I think I've embraced it, and I'm reaping the rewards now, and yeah, confidence. And then also obviously changing my equipment, which is massive, playing with new high-tech equipment, which allows for better balance and travel through the air, and then all of these things obviously compressed in one just makes a beautiful chocolate cake. So yeah, I think it's really great. I mean, I think everything is now where it should be, and hopefully it's the platform for me to progress and achieve my goals and dreams.
Glad to hear. And let's look ahead to this weekend then. You're going to be back in Milton Keynes for the World Matchplay, part of Sky Sports' team. We had you on just after last year's World Matchplay when you did the commentary there for Sky for the tournament. How much are you looking forward to being part of it again?
It's always, I mean, the number one prize is to be part of the tournament. The number two prize is to do analysis on the tournament and do punditry and commentary. So, yeah, I mean, coming back to it's going to be a different match play, not in Blackpool, obviously, in Milton Keynes and without the crowd. So, yeah, I think hopefully making it entertaining for the viewers itself. But I'm sure the players will do that, and we'll just add the team on top. It's fantastic to obviously go back and see all the people that was part of the Sky team, the likes of Wayne and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's going to be quite different. I mean, not having Dave Clark there as well, the legend that he is, phenomenal person, and obviously one of the people that, I mean, in South Africa, when I was watching, he was a very known key figure. When you heard his voice, you immediately recognize it with darts. And now not having him there, I mean, all of these new kind of normals are changing and created now. So it's going to be fantastic. I mean, Matchplay is the second biggest tournament on the PDC calendar, apart from the Worlds, and the players are really playing well. I mean, the amount of time averages we're seeing now. So hopefully, they carry it over this week, and I don't know, we might see a new Matchplay champion, or will it up across defend his title. It's going to be tough, but I think it's going to be entertaining nonetheless.
Going into this tournament, as you say, it's going to be behind closed doors. It's going to be in Milton Keynes. You haven't got the crowd there. How do you think the players are going to cope with playing on a stage with no crowd? Do you feel like they're going to adjust quite quickly to it?
Yeah, I think the summer series is getting a taste of because virtually it'll be like playing on a floor tournament, but just with a lot bigger prize money and a lot more prestige. So, and when I say prestige, I mean like as in order of merit rankings and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's massive. It's going to be a massive opportunity for the players that do actually excel on the floor, because it will be just kind of just elevate the stage. That's the only difference. From a floor tournament, a lot of players feel the pressure when they're playing in front of crowd. Obviously, like the likes of Devon Petersen, for example, when he plays in front of crowd, he always get booed now and so on and so forth. So you won't have that element of stress or kind of distraction, if you must call it that. And then other players just sometimes get nervous because of the moment itself. So yeah, I think with the summer series, with the PDC having a summer series and 5 back-to-back, it gave players enough time to actually warm up for the match play. And yeah, I think I don't know how it's going to turn out on a performance basis. Like, I'm hoping that the players will it won't have too much of an effect, but I'm sure that it will be business as usual for most.
And I want to ask you for a tip on who you think is going to win it, but can you give us one name who we should be keeping an eye out for? Maybe someone who not many people are talking about at the moment.
It's tough though. The top players are playing really well at the moment. The likes of Gezi, Peter Wright, Michael Van Cowen. Those are your normal. The one player that I think if he keeps his head, actually it could be Dave Chisnell. He's playing really well and consistent as well, which is I think just as long as he remains focused. I mean, he's always a guy known for throwing massive scoring, but his finishing has been really spot on. So yeah, I think Dave Chisnell could be somebody that could shock the world.
We shall see. And last one for you before we let you go, just got to ask you about the World Cup as well. I know it's an event which means a lot to you, and it's still going to go ahead this year in Austria in November. I know it's still a few months away, but I know in the past that you've been involved in putting on events in South Africa, including qualifying events for it. Is there any early plans in terms of that yet on who's going to be partnering you?
So at this point in time, I mean, it's a struggle with South Africa going back and forth into different levels of lockdown and different stages and so on and so forth. So at this point in time, we have a few names that we're looking at, but I think that we're still hopeful that we could host a qualifier. But if not, then we'll probably have to just look at the names that we have, and yeah, it'll probably come down to the PDC selecting somebody with the credentials, I guess. But it's challenging. I mean, I don't know how the other nations will do it as well, because I don't know if they host qualifiers or they just take it from the rankings, considering that there's not been a lot of starts and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think there's a massive change going to happen. But yeah, I don't know, especially with South Africa, what the qualifier, if the qualifier is going to go for this year for the World Cup qualifier. But the World Champs has been booked for October. So hopefully, I'm hoping that the restrictions get dropped slightly or less, and we're going to actually have the World Champ qualifier. That's definitely on the cards. But for this point in time now, we're just waiting on news from South Africa. But if not, then we have a few names that are kind of obviously accompanied with credentials and what the performance has been like. And yeah, that might be up to the BBC to select.
Well, fingers crossed for that. And Devon, it's always nice to have a chat with you. Thanks very much for taking the time out, and well done on your performances last week, and wish you all the best with the commentary at the match play coming up as well.
Thanks a lot, Alex. I appreciate the call and enjoyed your questions. Thanks a lot. Keep well.
Thanks again to Devon for joining us. Now let's get into our preview for the World Matchplay then. All gets underway this weekend, Saturday evening, 6 o'clock. We've got the first games, and for the first time in the event's history, it is going to be played away from the Winter Gardens, Blackpool, away from a crowd as well. It's going to be behind closed doors at the Marshall Arena in Milton Keynes. What are your expectations for how it's going to go?
Well, they're definitely different than what I said a couple weeks ago on this show, because what we saw this past week in Milton Keynes is that, well, maybe not every player in the field, but most of them are playing really good darts. But the pressure is going to be, well, incomparable. Yes, these players have played in high-stakes moments before, but none of them have ever played behind closed doors in such an important event. And there's really nothing to compare it to. So it's tough to say. The closest we've had was back when they had the old championship league with the group stage for the top 32 players going through. Was it 10 players or 8 players in a group, and the winner advanced to the finals, the bottom couple were relegated, and everyone else came back until there were 8 people left. And that was played behind closed doors, online streaming only. And there was quite a bit of money on the line in that, but that's the closest we've had. This is £150,000 first prize that's going to be won behind closed doors. There's nothing like that in darts. So it's going to be different. It's going to be a bit weird, but these are world-class professionals, and I think the standard will be every bit as good as what we saw this past week, even though the stakes will be higher. I think we're going to be looking forward to one of the highest quality, not the highest quality world match plays, but at the same time, the atmosphere just won't be the same. Not having what is the best crowd in darts, or at least the best crowd in PDC darts, because it is the most mature and the most passionate darts fans that go to the World Matchplay. It's not the party goers like you see on the European Tour, like you see at the World Championship, like you see at some of the other TV events. Yes, there are a few of those, but this is usually the fans tournament, and it's not going to be there this year. So it's going to be a bit different. It's going to be weird, but I think it's going to be a very high quality affair.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit strange. And the first thing I want to really get into on this answer really is to say that the news that we saw on Sunday evening, Dave Clark, who's been fronting Sky's coverage of darts for the last 18 years, he's been with Sky for the last 22 years, Sunday evening announcing that he's stepping down from his role with Sky. And the reaction that we saw online over the last few days, it's been, quite touching really, how many people have reached out and said what an amazing job he did. And of course, 2011 he got diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he said in the past, a specialist said that he'd only probably be able to present live sports for 2 or 3 more years. Well, best part of a decade later, and he's still going strong. He's doing it in front of thousands of people and many more people watching at home. So I think, like everyone else, just want to say what an amazing job he's done and wish him all the best for the future. But with regards to the tournament itself, it is going to feel a little bit different, it is going to be a little bit strange. But like you, I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about what we're going to see over those 9 nights. Given the quality that we saw last week with the Summer Series, I think it was good that the players had that opportunity to maybe shake off a few cobwebs. I know it's a different floor event to a stage event, but they had 5 days, 5 events to shake off any rust that they had with the break that they had playing in-person darts, if you like. But Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be different, but we've seen players already come out. Going Price, he's the one who, in the past years, we've seen the crowd go against him. Well, he said that he probably wants to have the booze because it helps him concentrate a little bit more. So I don't know how it's going to go. And I know we've had Matt Porter on the show this week earlier on saying about that they're going to be pumping in the crowd noise into the venue as well because we're going to hear it on TV. The players are also going to hear it as well. So we'll see. But yeah, I think like you, given what we saw last week and the standard, and a lot of those players are going to be involved this week, I'm confident. And okay, it's not going to be like we used to with the Winter Garden, such an amazing venue, which we're going to come on to a little bit in a moment. But yeah, I'm hopeful that we're going to see 9 days of top quality darts, and I'm sure a week on Sunday when we get to the final, there'll be a lot of people that will be really excited to see who's going to lift that trophy.
Now our third question of the week, and it also obviously involves the World Matchplay, and what a draw for the top 4 seeds heading into here, getting 4 of the top 6 players from the Pro Tour qualifiers. Michael Van Goren drawing Brendan Dolan, Rob Cross drawing Gabriel Clemens, Peter Wright drawing Jose de Sosa, and of course Goran Price drawing the former Lakeside finalist Danny Noppert. Which of the 4 top seeds do you think has the toughest first round opponent?
Well, I think they're all tough, and I think a lot of people are maybe discounting Brendan Dolan straight away, not least the bookies. They've got him at a 7-1 shot in a 2-horse race. Michael Van Goen at a 1-14 shot to get through that game, and at the moment he's 3% on our poll that we've put out. This, again, as we say with all of them, you can go and vote if you've just listened to the show. We're going to run them for the rest of the week. Peter Wright, Jose de Sousa, that game's winning at the moment with 55%. Then you've got Rob Cross, Gabriel Clemens, 29%. Going Price, Danny Noppert, 13%. It is a really hard one to pick because it's going to be different circumstances for everyone. Who's going to be the players that are going to get used to these new conditions that they've got to play in first? And we're going to find out with some of these players as well. I know we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, who's going to benefit the most playing in a major event with no crowd. But we're going to see whether it's going to be players when they're under pressure. Is it because of that live crowd, or is it just because you've got the cameras there, or is it just because of the vast sums of money that you've got at stake? The prize pot, £700,000, £150,000 to the winner. It's a big sum of money to win playing a week or so of darts, and also as well that the prestige of winning these events as well. This event's been going since 1994. It's one of the most prestigious events in darts now, so there's a lot on the line for this. And for me, it is a tough one. I'm probably going to go with the Going Price Danny Noppert game, and we're going to come to our picks later as well, who we think is going to win the title, who's going to get to the final. When I was just going through game by game who I think is going to win, and I've got all 4 of these players coming through the first round, but I do think it's not going to be easy for any of them. But for me, I'm going to go with Going Price Danny Noppert, just because Danny Noppert's probably got the most experience of playing stage darts in more recent years, out of Brendan Dolan, Jose de Sousa and Gabriel Clemens. I know with Gabriel, we saw him run Glenn Durrant very close in the Grand Slam last year. Jose performing very, very well last week. They've all got pedigree. Brendan as well is coming back into some form. But I just think Danny Noppert is criminally underrated. He is a player to watch out for. And I know he's played Going a few times on TV now. I do think he's got a good run in him. He's got to a final last year, got to a semi-final a couple of years before that. Of course, a former Lakeside finalist. I just think out of those 4, he could possibly be the one to play spoiler for these top 4 seeds.
You mentioned Danny Noppert being criminally underrated. When we did our Q&A a week or so ago, I mentioned him as, alongside Joe Cullen, the 2 most underrated players in the PDC right now. But I think Brendan Dolan is also right up there, and he's not getting that much respect from the bookies you mentioned, putting him 7-1, but also from the answers to this question so far, getting by far the least amount, only a quarter as many votes as the next lowest person. And the question's not who is most likely to pull the upset, because, okay, fair. He drew the world number 1. He is the least likely of the 4 because he's having the most difficult draw. But the form he's been in for the past year now has been incredible. And okay, he didn't have the best week in Milton Keynes, but he didn't do poorly. And he made up for it, or almost made up for it on Sunday, getting through to the last 16, putting together good wins against Jermaine Rodman and Josh Payne, and averaging over a ton against Gavin Carlin. Had a good Sunday before going out to Peter Wright in the last 16. And if you go back right before the break, he made a final on the Saturday, the last Players' Championship weekend before the event, before the break. And that was the Saturday where the players were still in. Everyone withdrew on the Sunday. So in a near full field, he won on a deep run. He's at a semifinal as well this year, and he won 2 titles at the back end of last year. He's been playing really good darts for the past year. I think that's a tough draw. And it's even made tougher by, of the last 4 times that they've gone head-to-head, they've split them. And one of the 2 times, Brendan Dolan lost in the last leg decider. It's actually a trend that Dolan has. He's lost 6 of his 18 losses to Michael Van Gerwen have come in last leg deciders. So while Van Gerwen usually gets the one-up over Brendan pushes him. That one appearance at the Grand Slam where it was a runaway aside. This is a tough matchup, both based on their history and on the form. I think it's the toughest draw of any of the 4. But as I said, it's not the most likely to pull the upset. I think you have to say the most likely. I'm going to say Gabriel Clemens because he is a superstar waiting to happen. And Rob Cross sometimes has slow starts to tournaments. If he has a slow start, Gabriel can run him out of the building. I think that's the most likely to be an upset. But these are all 4 tough draws. The toughest, though, being Van Gerwen's.
We've got a couple more questions to go through before we end the show, but let's get on to our next guest first, and it is with the reigning World Matchplay champion, Rob Cross. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the former world champion and the reigning World Matchplay champion, Rob Cross. Thanks for the time, Rob. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Been very busy at home doing a fair bit of work.
Good to hear. Well, the World Matchplay is almost upon us, and you're going to go to Milton Keynes this weekend as the defending champion. I just want to start by going back to that week in Blackpool 12 months ago. What memories stick out from your run to the title last year?
Oh, just probably the Darryl Gurney game, to be honest, because I looked down and out, and it's sort of everything seems a bit fade now, I suppose. But yeah, that game there, I just thought he dropped sort of his intensity, and mine just picked up a bit. And but I will say, just sort of the match play itself, being in the Winter Gardens, is just an amazing venue in itself. I've always enjoyed it there, and it's always been good.
Yeah, you touch on that semi-final. I think a lot of people will probably be like you, remembering that game from last year. 14-7, 15-10 down. You come back to win 17-15. And in your interview afterwards, you said that game's going to stay with you forever. I mean, how highly does that win rank for you in your career today?
I think it was just a grind. Sometimes, we can all play good darts, and we can always be on the end of big averages and sort of keep going like that, and darts seems easy then, but when things ain't going well and you can grind a result and stuff, I think that's all what matters, and you need that sort of quality in you sometimes to come from behind to win games, and obviously when it does come off, it gives you a tremendous feel, and you feel proud of yourself, and your confidence goes up, and it really helps you. And
the final was a little bit different. You got off to a hot start, 9 legs in a row to go 9-0 up. You end up winning 18-13, I believe, against Michael Smithy then. How good did it feel to join an elite group of players to have won the PDC World Championship and the World Matchplay as well?
Yeah, sort of at the time you don't really think about it when you're up there, but I think there's only ever been 4 people what's ever done it, so it's tremendous in itself, considering I've only been really playing on the professional circuit. I think it's my 4th year this year. But yeah, just to join them, and they're illustrious. And obviously you've got Gary Anderson, Phil Taylor, and Michael Van Gerwen, and that's just tremendous, really. It's to be counted in that clan there that you've done it. So sometimes you still feel like you have to pinch yourself.
Yeah, good company to be in, and that was, of course, your first big major title since winning the World Championship on your debut. I think that was around 18 months earlier. I mean, some people were saying you're a one-hit wonder, but last year you won the World Matchplay, then you won the European Championship as well. That's not a bad statement to make, is it, to those people?
No, exactly. It's been, as much as I've had my ups and winning the Worlds and everything's fantastic, it's been a massive learning place for me. And at least now I've relaxed a lot more now, and I don't sort of get stressed as much, and it just allows me to be me.
2019 ended in disappointment for you with that early exit of the World Championships, but I suppose it gave you a little longer break to recharge the batteries, assess things from the season just gone. How did you spend that time during the break?
I didn't go on the board at all. I spent a lot of time with the family. I spent a bit of time at home doing some work, and it was wonderful, actually. It was probably the biggest gap what I've had with the family, obviously, since I've been professional darts player. So it was lovely to have that time and stuff. And I will say, obviously, it's sort of going out of the Worlds early and stuff, that hurt me very much. And it did take me quite a while to get over it. But yeah, now we can only look forward.
And you came back for the new season, start of this year, looking trimmer as well. You spoke about your weight loss that you had during the break. How much did losing the weight help your game, or did it take a little bit of time to readjust after that?
I think it took a bit of time to readjust, but I think now obviously I'm used to it. I'm back playing well again, and I'm always sort of having the time off what we've had lately. I'm looking forward to every tournament now.
Yeah, it has been a bit of a break, hasn't it? We got a few months into the season, then the virus took over, shut everything down. I know it was a hard time for yourself personally. With you had a member of the family pass away due to the COVID-19. Your grandfather, was he an inspiration for your darts as well?
It was fantastic. He was just an inspiration, just in life, really. It was a pleasure to have him around, and obviously, that happened, and I lost a massive part of my life. He's always been there for me with me nan, and I've been very grateful over the years. But yeah, a massive loss. But sort of now you look at it and you think to yourself, right, I'm going to just try and make a positive out of it and do him proud, like I always would try.
Definitely. And you're also busy during the break building a new darts room in your garden. Just talk to us a little bit about what's that like, and how much will it help you having a place outside your house to practice in?
Yeah, so we had the place put up, and then had to do inside, and it's just a little bit different, really. I think because I have to go out there and get away from the house. So obviously I have 3 small children, so it's always get up and go in here. But it's quite nice now just to go out there, get a nice bit of peace and quiet, and do your practice in a nice atmosphere, really, where you can concentrate. And I think that's helped me. I think it's helped me a lot, actually, just to knuckle down and get me practice in and not getting disrupted all the time. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, before then, did you have a board inside your house, or did you go somewhere else to practice? What was the setup you had before then?
Used to pop out quite a bit and just have a practice. I always used to Sidley Workmen's Club down the road there. I'm always welcome there. So yeah, they always open up, and I always get a board out the back for myself. They're always great. But realistically, I had a board in the house also. But yeah, with my little girl keep running every sort of 5 minutes underneath it, you don't really want to throw them. No. Because obviously scared of it in her.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had the long break from the tour, but last week we saw everyone back in action with the summer series, the 5 ranking events over 5 days, going into the bubble in Milton Keynes. How were you feeling when you arrived at Milton Keynes for the test and then to go into the quarantine?
I think I was more worried about the test personally, having things put down and obviously getting checked in your throat and up your nose. But in general, I think you make it worse because obviously I knew I had to go for it. So you don't panic over it, but you know it's there and you got to do it. So after the test, everything was fine. I have to admit that the tournaments run like clockwork, like normal, and the PDC done very well to obviously set all this up, and I'm very, very grateful just to be back playing darts.
Yeah, and your first game was picked for one of the stream boards, and due to the technical issues, you had to wait a little bit longer to then play off camera. I mean, by then you must have been itching to get going again after such a long wait. Yeah,
definitely. Obviously, it's been a long time, but it's give me time to sort myself out and do the things what I wanted to get done at home. And I've had some good quality time with the family, and it's been nice, really, I have to admit. But now, sort of, coming to last week, knowing that you was going away, I was raring to get going.
And the highlight of the week has obviously for you got to be Saturday and the run to the final, and in the semi-finals getting the 9-darter against Mensa-Suljovic as well. Overall, what did you take away from the week?
I thought I played well here and there. I had, don't get me wrong, my timing was a little bit out here and there. I hit a big shot, I missed a few doubles and stuff, and it was me undoing on a few days. But in general, I played well, I thought. I enjoyed it too, and it was nice to be back. But you always come back, and you're always going to have an element of rust, I believe. And it was nice to hit the 9 and a few big averages and stuff. But I definitely look forward now to the match play. I'll be better again.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the match play before we let it go. Your first game is going to be on Sunday against Gabriel Clemens, your fellow target player who's continuing to rise up the rankings himself. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, he's a great player, Gabriel. He just gets on with it, really. He's just a gentleman, and he is dangerous, so I will have to be near my best to win that game. I'm looking forward just to getting back up on a stage, really, and just playing up on a stage. I know we're not going to have the crowd there, and it's going to be weird circumstances like that, but like all fellow professionals, you've just got to get on with it. But the excitement to go back and perform and hit big averages, that's the plan.
Yeah, and you spoke earlier about how much you love the Winter Gardens, you love going to Blackpool for the tournament. As we know, it's not going to be there this year. We're not going to have the crowd. Something's going to be similar, I suppose. You've got the same stage as what it would usually be. They're going to put the crowd noise into the venue. How do you feel you're going to cope with those changes?
Yeah, I think it'll be fine. Obviously, it's just going to be like a pro tour, pretty much, just being up on the stage, because the pro tours are quiet. So, look, it'll be the same for me, and it'll be the same for everyone else. So, it'll be whoever handles it better will win. But I think it's been so long with the time off now and stuff, and I couldn't really care if we had the fans there or not at the minute. I just want to get back and do your job. So I can't wait just to sort of go in there and start playing.
And lastly, just looking at a little bit further ahead, I think we're due an update on the Premier League this week. You're currently in 8th place before the break, but only 2 points off the top 4. Do you fancy your chances of continuing your run of making the playoffs each year when it starts up again?
Yeah, definitely. The way I'm playing at the minute, I feel happy and stuff, and I know I'm doing better things on the practice board, so if that comes out, I'll definitely qualify. I feel, like I said, I feel in myself, I feel fantastic now. There'd be no excuses, no thingies if I did fail, but I'll go in there with every intention to qualify for the top 4.
Well, Rob, we always appreciate your time. Thanks very much for taking the time out ahead of the beginning of your defence of the World Matchplay, and wish you all the best with how it goes in Milton Keynes.
Thank you very much, and thanks for talking to me.
I'm looking forward to this next question. Of course, this is the first year that the World Matchplay is taking place outside of Blackpool. It's being held in Milton Keynes, as we've said, and as the only co-host, Burton, to have experienced the nightlife in Milton Keynes, it won't happen. But let's say that the PDC decide after they're going to keep the World Matchplay at Milton Keynes next year and give the Milton Keynes people a chance to watch it, defend their decision.
Well, Lisa, where I went drinking when I was in Milton Keynes, that place no longer even exists. So I don't know what the nightlife is like there now, and I don't know how it compares to Blackpool. But I don't think that's how the PDC should make their decision. I think it should go where it belongs. While I think the PDC need to move events around more, and in particular move events outside of England and the United Kingdom, this is not one of those that should move. This event should be at the Winter Gardens. It should be in Blackpool. It's one of the great traditions in darts. Blackpool in July, London in December, and I think it should stay that way. I don't think there's an argument to be made that, well, really, there needs to be any TV event in Milton Keynes, but I think maybe there's an argument because of its central location that more Players' Championship events should be there. MK has dropped off the PDC calendar in the last couple of years, at least at the Pro Tour level. There's been a Challenge Tours and Development Tours there on occasion. But it's a much more central location, at least within England, for Players' Championship events than going all the way up north to Barnsley and Wigan. It's more fair to some of the players down south who don't have any events and really haven't had any events for a long time. So I think having Players' Championship events in MK makes sense and it would be fair. But no, the World Matchplay needs to go back to Blackpool next year if feasible.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you there. And we look at the TV events that have been going on for such a long time. And the BDO World Championship, of course, was held at Lakeside for 35 years. And that run came to an end at the start of this year. So when we're looking at TV events, major events that have been held at the same venue for such a long time, the World Matchplay, that was the longest running one. Going into this week, of course, that's going to change, but 26 years it's been held at the only venue that's held the tournament, and yeah, it is very special. I've been fortunate to go there for the last 3 years now. The first year is Press, the last couple of years going as a fan, and it's such a good weekend. Go up for the opening weekend, Friday, come back Tuesday, go for the Monday night session for the darts, and the Monday after party is a lot of good fun as well. And as we had on at the start of the show, the Q-Sticks, they're one of the bands that we see there. They're performing some songs on the Central Pier outside, also inside Pirates Bay as well. We make sure that we go and see them a couple of times during the weekend as well. They're always good to go and see, and it is just a great weekend for any darts fan that is able to get to the Winter Gardens. And I'm sure there's plenty that had got tickets early at the start of this year when tickets went on sale and they were looking forward to going there for the first time. And unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. But I know that the PDC have said that all the ticket holders, they can either get a refund, I think, or they can hold the tickets on to 2021. And we've got our fingers crossed that next year we will be back at the Winter Gardens, Blackpool. Hopefully I'll be there as well to see some of it. But yeah, I don't think you're going to see the tournament move away from the Winter Gardens anytime soon when it is feasible to get the event back there.
And then we'll most likely take next week off while the tournament's ongoing. Maybe not, we'll see. So let's get our predictions in right now. The trophy, of course, named for Phil Taylor, who won it a record 16 times. Wigan Athletic threatening to put 16 past Hull City tonight to match Phil Taylor's total. But who do you see lifting the Phil Taylor trophy on Sunday in a week? And against who in the final?
Oh, it's a boring answer, but I'm going to go with the top two seeds. I'm going to go with a repeat of the World Final and a repeat of the first final that we saw in the Summer Series last week. I'm going to go with Michael van Gerwen against Peter Wright. And as I said a moment ago, I was just going through the draw, picking out my results, how they're going to go. So this is going to go completely wrong, but I've got a good feeling for Krzysztof Ratajski this week. I've got a feeling he's going to make the semi-finals. He's going to get past Rob Cross, and then he's going to get past, I'm going to go Mensah Suljovic in the quarterfinals, and I think Michael's just going to get the better of him to get through to the final. Bottom half of the draw, I can see a few upsets going on there. I've got a feeling as well for Jeffrey Desvan. I think he's going to put out Glenn Durrant, and we're going to see a repeat of Wright against Desvan, which, again, it's one of those games from the last World Championship not many people are talking about anymore, but it was such a good game, the comeback from Jeffrey to pull it back to that deciding set, and I think it went into overtime as well before Peter Wright just managed to get through and, of course, go on to win the world title. I've got him getting past Jeffrey again, and then a repeat of last year's epic quarterfinal with Daryl Gurney. I've got Peter getting a bit of revenge this time, and then the bottom bit of the draw, I'm going to go with Nathan Aspinall to get to the semi-finals and Peter to get the better of him. And in the final, I think it's going to be Michael to get on top on this one. I'm going to go 18-14 to the world number one, and he's going to reclaim that match play title that's eluded him for a few years now.
Tough to say brave pick when you're going for the world number one, but bit of a brave pick because he has struggled a bit in Blackpool, even when it's not in Blackpool like it is this year. Even though I've contradicted everything I said a couple of weeks ago that this is the most wide open match play, I still think it is the most wide open because everyone was playing so well this past weekend. I want to go something different than you, and I was going to say Van Gerwen, but maybe I should go to my guns and say Brendan Dolan will upset him in the first match. So you know what? Just to be different, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say Dolan's going to knock out the world number one right off the bat in that first round match to really throw this up for grabs. I'm going to go Gary Anderson to get out of the top half, who had a good week at Milton Keynes. He's a player who already plays less than most of the others, and he was a player who needed a break after battling injury over the past year. This is his year back to really reassert himself as one of the dominant forces. I think he will, and I think he'll get to the final where he's defending championship money from 2 years ago. Will he win it? No. In an all-Scottish final, I'm going for the world champion to make it 2 major Sky titles on the bounce, as I have Peter Wright to put the World Matchplay right into his locker and join that world title and UK Open title that he won a few years ago and become a 3-time major champion, beating his fellow Scotsman in the final. Anything else for this week?
Well, I certainly like your prediction more than mine, so fingers crossed your one comes off rather than mine. But yeah, just to say thanks everyone for listening, thanks everyone for your support, and thanks to our guests for coming on the show this week. Before finish, just want to say we've got another giveaway for you guys if you want to get involved. We've linked up with Curtis Sport, who are the new official program suppliers of the PDC. They've put together a program for the World Matchplay, and we've got 5 copies of that to give away. It's free to enter our draw. What we're going to do is just say retweet our pin tweet on our Twitter at Weekly Dartscast. It will be just this tweet saying new podcast and who the guests are and a link to listen to it. Just retweet that. We'll probably pick the people out on Friday, so we can get the programs to you as soon as possible. So you don't have very long. Make sure you go and enter if you want to have a go, and we'll pick 5 of you at random and enjoy the darts if you're going to be watching it over the weekend. And as you say, might be back for a show during the week. We're not quite sure yet. We haven't decided, but if we're not, I'm sure you're going to give people an extra hang tight if we're not back next week.
Yeah, and so I'll say hang tight right now, just in case we're not back next week. So there's your extra one. But yeah, just echoing that, thanks to our listeners, thanks to our guests, thanks to our sponsors, thanks to Ashley Fletcher for grabbing an equalizer just before halftime for Middlesbrough just now. We'll be back at the very least in 2 weeks to recap the World Matchplay. If we do happen to get a show in next week, great. I hope everyone enjoys the first major televised event. I can't say post-COVID, but at least during COVID, because it is still ongoing. I hope everyone is safe. I hope everyone stays safe, and hang tight for the next few days, because televised darts is just around the corner.